Time is precious, and so are our pets. So time with our pets is extra precious. That's why we started Dutch. Dutch provides 24/7 access to licensed vets with unlimited virtual visits and follow-ups for up to 5 pets. You can message a vet at any time and schedule a video visit the same day. Our vets can even prescribe medication for many ailments, and shipping is always free. With Dutch, you'll get more time with your pets and year-round peace of mind when it comes to their vet care. Go to Dutch.com to get vet care that is always there for just $92 a year.
Hello, book lovers. Welcome to Must Love Books. Hello and welcome back to Must Love Books podcast. Today I am here with author Julia Fine, writing as Margaux Eliot for her newest novel, Honeymoon Stage. Hi, Julia. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm super excited to have you on. Congratulations on the release of Honeymoon Stage. We're just going to dive right in. So why don't you tell our listeners all about your new novel?
Okay, yes. Honeymoon Stage is about a production assistant on a reality TV show in the early 2000s. So sort of the beginning days of what we know as contemporary reality television, specifically celeb reality television. So Cassidy is the production assistant on a show called Honeymoon Stage, which is loosely modeled after Newlyweds Nick and Jessica, the MTV show from 2002. And so she goes as a production assistant on this show and comes in with one set of expectations of what that experience will be like, and slowly realizes that sort of the pressures of trying to create reality while handling celebrities who are being their quote unquote authentic selves is more than she bargained for. We follow her sort of ups and downs over the course of working on this show as various secrets are revealed from cast members, and she has to figure out sort of how much of reality is being manipulated. And then in the present day, there's also a storyline where she herself, sort of years later, has to decide if she's going to get married on TV as sort of a spin-off of the show and figure out sort of, again, what secrets are still hidden and lying in wait for her with this experience.
That has to be, for the character, such a fun and absolutely wild ride, going from being behind the scenes to now being at the forefront of her own celebrity reality show, because her fiance is a former child star and musician. So they have their own spinoff of a show that she used to work on behind the scenes, and now she is the star. That's got to be such a wild transition.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's for anyone, I think, on reality TV, I feel like nobody really knows, not necessarily the celebrities or like the super rich people who we're seeing, but like on something like Love is Blind or The Bachelor, where you're like, oh, you're a normal person going on reality TV. I feel like people generally are not prepared for it. But if you have worked on a reality TV show and you're still choosing to go on reality TV, like that's its own choice.
And why did you specifically choose our early thousands? I mean, that kind of was the start of modern reality TV, but why did you decide to choose that time period specifically?
Yeah, so I find it really interesting to watch reality TV now, and it's so easy to see sort of the formulas that they're using and the ways that producers are manipulating things behind the scenes. And we culturally sort of know when we watch reality TV that we're watching like a genre of television that is produced and like semi-scripted, and people are playing characters, and even though, like I said, the cast might not know precisely what they're getting into, they still have this understanding of, we're not watching like a wildlife documentary. You're told where to go and what to do, and you're sort of plied with questions and alcohol. But back in the beginnings of reality TV, it was much more of a like, turn the camera on and shoot what's happening. And I was really interested in the early 2000s as sort of the transition period of like where on a show like Newlyweds or The Osbournes or Keeping Up with the Kardashians, where celebrities were realizing that they could sort of create their own image and like use this as a way to craft the narrative. But as an audience, we were sort of figuring out like, is what actually is happening? Is this real or is it not? And the cast was sort of figuring out like how much of this is real and how much is not and what's actually happening. So it seems like a really interesting time to me that when when you sort of look backwards, seems like it led to our own embrace of social media and, influencer culture and so much of what we have today with these crafted personas and versions of celebrities who interact with fans on social media. Things like that began almost in those early reality TV days.
I'm glad that you bring up influencers on social media because I was kind of just thinking that social media, specifically with influencers, has really become its own form of reality
Hmm.
TV, especially like when it came to like these celeb reality shows.
Yeah, I think it totally has because we sort of know when we're watching influencers that this isn't reality. They've set up this thing and there's something else going on behind the camera, and yet we like buy in and we keep watching.
Yeah, absolutely. There's this trend I've been seeing on Instagram over the last few weeks of, kind of just going through your day with various influencers. And, they're like, oh, I wake up at this time and I do this first. And it's like done with a voiceover and,
Hmm.
some kind of catchy music in the background where they just show off their whole day. And it just really makes you wonder, like, okay, so what are they doing really in between
Yeah.
those, 3-second clips that are all edited together?
Yeah, and then also like how much of your day is spent. Like I think about this a lot as someone who has tried and sort of failed to do make social media videos for like work promotional stuff. Like it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of time. It's a lot of sort of finicky, nitpicky things, finding the right lighting. Like it's not, you're not just out in the world. Like you're out in the world recording yourself out in the world, which is a vastly different thing.
Yes.
I think it's really interesting to me sort of to look at the through line, like I said, between what the way that we all sort of accepted things as real in the early 2000s. And now we've gotten so cynical, I feel like, where nobody thinks when they're watching reality television that they're watching something totally authentic. And nobody thinks when they're watching influencers that like the person just sort of has the camera as they go about their day. Like we all know what it is. And then the opposite side was back, in the days of like newlyweds specifically, where everyone was like just assuming, like Jessica Simpson must be just this total idiot. And no one was like, oh, maybe she's putting on a persona in order to make this show successful. But I feel like we like have vacillated so much from thinking that people have no control to thinking that like everything is in control when the truth is probably somewhere in the middle for both of those things.
Absolutely. And I do remember when Newlyweds first aired and just that era of reality TV in general, where everything was presented as if it was authentic and real life. I mean, reality TV is called that for a
Hmm.
reason. But even then, it was still very scripted and very particularly chosen, down to lighting and scenes and what we're wearing and what we're going to cover today was all very specifically chosen for production. But it was still kind of played off as like, oh yeah, this is our real day-to-day life. When really, no, they're
Hmm.
still just making a TV show.
Hmm. Yeah, it's like a very interesting borderline there.
It also reminds me, I saw something recently. It was the life of a food influencer, and this food influencer goes to different restaurants and like tries all these amazing looking dishes. And then later admitted that they buy so much that they only eat 1 or 2 bites of
Oh my
everything that they're
gosh.
showing off. And then they throw it out because they're like, I'm trying 10 different, donuts today. Obviously, they're not going to eat 10 different donuts all at once. And instead of spreading it out, it's like, oh, we go to all these places in order to sample everything, these massive orders of food, like a table full of food. Like, we watch you eat a bite of everything, and then the rest of it just goes in the
It's thrown
trash.
away. That's so sad.
Yeah,
That's
it's
so
so
like,
sad.
man,
I
at
mean,
least
how
like
much food is wasted?
so wasteful. Just like product placement too in all of
Hmm.
these early shows.
Absolutely.
That you don't even think about them. Reality TV too, in doing sort of my research into like, again, the question of why the early 2000s. One of the reasons that in the early 2000s, reality TV really took off is because there was a writer's strike. And so they didn't have to pay the writers for reality TV who are still writers. They still have writers. They have like story producers. Like there's still somebody putting this together. If the like scripted writers like scripted TV writers were on strike, the reality writers, like they didn't have to be, they weren't associated with that union, they weren't covered, they could do that. And it was so much less expensive because you didn't have to pay writers to sort of do the thing beforehand. And so one of the reasons that it really took off is like these companies being like, oh, we can get a lot of like free labor in this. And it's much less expensive to just take a guy with a camera and follow these people around and get them into mischief than it is to like try to plan out and write out a full scripted episode of television.
Absolutely. And you know what? We saw kind of the same thing happen with the more recent strikes between SAG and the Writers Guild a couple summers ago. During the strike, a bunch of production companies reached out to social media influencers to try to gain contracts and entertainment work that way instead of, working with those. Obviously, they couldn't work with those who were on strike. So they immediately went back to reality TV just in a new, more modern way in the form of
Yeah,
social media influencers, especially on TikTok.
absolutely. Yeah. And one of the things too that I cover in Honeymoon Stage is at the time, now there is a union for reality TV workers. But in the beginning, because they were viewed as so distinct from other people working in television, like they did not have a union that was protecting them in terms of like HR, in terms of how many hours they could work, or like what types of work they would do. So when you think about like the role of a production assistant who's like getting a lot of grunt work anyway, and then without any sort of union behind them or anyone controlling. Like people worked insanely long hours, and these were, if you were filming a show that took place, like a reality show that took place at someone's house, you were like almost basically living at that house. Like that was your entire life as someone who worked on the crew of that show.
Absolutely. And I think that we've been seeing a lot more of reality TV explored through the eyes of producers in books and in TV. Netflix recently just had a romance film come out that was like, oh, we're basically filming The Bachelor. And there was a show a couple years ago. I'm gonna look up what it was called
Is
real
it
quick.
Unreal?
Yes,
Yes.
Unreal. Yes. Oh my
Hmm.
goodness. I
Love
was
that show.
obsessed with that show.
So
I
good.
loved Sherry Appleby in it. So I like seeing different perspectives. Obviously Unreal was more of a drama, and the new Netflix movie was, obviously just a rom-com. So very, very different ways that they approached reality TV production. But they
Hmm.
both did have something in common, which I believe your novel does as well. And that is showing just how much of what viewers see is very different from what is actually going on behind the
Hmm.
scenes, and how much manipulation there is by producers to kind of mold storylines that might not necessarily have been happening in the way that they actually happened
Hmm.
from what we see as viewers.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference with Honeymoon Stage, and I eat those kind of things up too. I love it. I love watching like how low will a producer go to get the shot that they need or the content that they want. But yeah, the thing with Honeymoon Stage, I think with a lot of these shows are sort of, it's like everyday people who come in. Like if you think about Unreal, like the kind of person who goes on The Bachelor who comes in like, I'm just looking for love, and like, yeah, I want all this free stuff of being on TV, and like maybe I also want to get my name out there in whatever sort of way. But they're just sort of like quote unquote regular people. Although these days you can like sort of turn that into a career as a reality TV figure, I guess, which is very funny. But the difference with Honeymoon Stage is it's like really focused on that like celeb reality space, where I feel like the people in the cast are much more aware going in of their own ability to use this as a way to manipulate the storyline and tell the story. And I was really interested to, specifically again going back to the things that interested me so much about Newlyweds, Nick and Jessica, as like a piece of cultural anthropology, the difference in sort of the way young women, in particular like the pop music industry at the time, like the types of agency that they had and the way that they were being portrayed in the media. And so a lot of the book too is about sort of this how to be create sort of a persona as a pop star, I guess, and how much of that is like this careful formula of being relatable, but not too relatable. And you want to be sexy, but not too sexy, and all of these different ingredients that go into sort of putting out this public figure. And so I was thinking a lot about like Britney Spears, Jessica Simpson, specifically these very young, a lot of them started as like like very young children when they started performing, and sort of how their careers moved and how reality TV could almost be a space for them to like take back control of the narrative in a way. Whereas in some of the more like everyday people reality TV, it's very much in the producer's hands, but like on Newlyweds or on Honeymoon Stage and sort of these celeb reality shows, like the stars are also the producers. And so that makes it interesting in a different way as well.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot to say about the difference in agency and what sort of control the stars of the show have in regards to, whether it is a celebrity or a regular average Joe kind of person, and how
Mhm.
those storylines can be manipulated and changed based on that
Yeah.
agency.
Yeah, because I mean, if you think about it as a producer, if you're trying to get like the juiciest stuff, but you have the star of the show sort of in the cutting room with you, being like, no, no, we can't use that legally. Nope, I'm going to say no to that. It creates a different experience than if you are, totally free to use all of these people have signed a waiver that signed away saying do what you want. But I feel like celebrities too have a much more, particularly in like today, they're very in control of their images, and they know where to go to get a paparazzi shot and how to say something and what to put out, and it's all very crafted. And a lot of that, I think reality TV sort of provides a pathway between when the studio system was in charge of the star kind of situation to like today where people like Taylor Swift really are in charge of their own public image.
So, what other nostalgic early 2000s culture can readers expect to find in Honeymoon Stage?
Oh gosh. I mean, there's a lot of like MSN Messenger, and the buddy list and AIM. The technology was probably the biggest difference because it is on the cusp of like we thought we had the coolest, latest, newest technology, like, the texting plan and the flip phone and things like that. So there's all that sort of tech. There is a lot about the sort of the pop culture of the day because we did not yet have social media and all of these different distribution systems was like whatever MTV said, whatever the late night hosts said. And so I think a lot of the book brings us back to that time where you were not able to get everyone's take on everything instantly. It was like, this is what page 6 says, and that's what goes. So that's there as well. And then a lot of just like the pop music and women in pop music.
To say, I remember the days of AIM, Instant Messenger, and how you spent time curating your perfect away message. And that was how you expressed yourself on social media. And
Yeah. Song lyrics in the weird font with like the numbers and the letters in some capital for
yep.
sure. I feel like it also just like the stereotypical sort of like millennial girl power vibe. The book to me feels very much like it comes out of a place of like limited to girl power, which I'm really interested in like thinking about if a commercialized version, like buying a shirt that says girl power at limited to actually does anything for like your solidarity. Is it really interesting pseudo-feminism, I think, that like a lot of girls who grew up in like the 90s and 2000s were raised on that I think people see through now in a way that like we bought into perhaps a bit too much back then.
Yes, it was a very surface level
Hmm.
brand of feminism that avoided doing any criticism or work
Yeah,
or
nothing intersectional, nothing where
introspection.
you
Yeah,
actually have
not
to do any.
intersect
Yeah.
journal. Here's my purple tie-dye ombre
Hmm.
shirt that says girl power with a
Yes.
peace
Yep.
sign, and like that was
Absolutely.
it. Like
The gel
that was
pens.
the
Hmm.
yes, that was the epitome of girls supporting girls. That was as far as it went.
Yeah,
Wearing
so
a
a lot of the book is about that too, because if you think about, being a female reality TV producer with this female star who you're helping. They have sort of a love-hate relationship, in terms of, are we trying to create the image of the celebrity that she wants? Are we trying to create something that it makes for juicy television? Is your goal to be a decent human being and help a person in need? So there's all sorts of decision making there. And I think it's heavily like the things that Cassidy, our main character, does or does not do are heavily influenced by sort of that like cultural zeitgeist.
So I want to talk about next. You write both as Julia Fine and Margaux Eliot,
Mhm.
and the novels that you write under each pen name are very, very different in genre. So I want to ask you on how do you separate those two aspects of both yourself and your professional writing career?
Yeah, it's so funny because when I started writing this book, I really didn't see it as all that different from my previous books. And I think if you sort of like strip it down to like the ideas that I'm interested in, which again, like have to do a lot with this sort of feminist bind, and the role of women in society and whether or not stepping into a role that somebody else creates for you is empowering and gives you, I think all of my books grapple with those questions. And so when I started writing this one, I was like, I'm just going to do that, but it's going to be in 2002 Los Angeles reality TV. And the more that I wrote it, the more I realized that the whole vocabulary was really different, and the things that this book needed were really different because my previous stuff is sort of a lot more gothic in tone. It's speculative. There's a lot of like atmospheric, sort of moody stuff. They're darker. Like, not to say, I think this book has its dark moments, but overall, it's certainly not as like, it's not a tragedy in the way that some of the other ones are. The vocabulary is really different, like the language that I'm using. It just feels like a totally different type of book. If you are a reader of my previous stuff, there's stuff to appreciate, but I also think if you're someone who picked up the previous stuff, you still might like Honeymoon Stage. And so it felt like I needed a different way to express that like I was doing these things in a different way. And so my agent, it was sort of funny because she all along had sort of been like, yeah, you're going to need a pen name for this one. Um, and I had resisted it. And then I got to a point where I realized like, oh yeah, this is a really different book. And by publishing it under a different name, it allows me to make the choices that this book needs. Once I decided to do that, it was really like revising the book. I knew, oh, it can do this instead of having to stick with what I felt I had to do under my own name. I can do different things.
Absolutely love that. How you're able to completely separate the two and how that separation really allowed you to be more open with writing this novel.
I think there are things where I felt like, oh, this would not belong in a Julia Fine novel, but I can do it here because I'm sort of establishing, oh, this is a different kind of thing.
Absolutely. And now, did writing Honeymoon Stage, did this change in your writing process at all? Or do you kind of approach writing your own novels from the same way?
Yeah, it was really pretty similar. I mean, I think editorially is where there was the most difference because I was looking to enhance or sort of lessen different aspects of the book. Like if I had wanted it to be Honeymoon Stage by Julia Fine, I would have like gone a lot more heavy on the introspection. I think it would have been darker, more literary. And with this, I knew that I wanted it to be lighter. It's not as heavy on like the figurative language as some of my previous stuff. But in actually drafting it, it felt really, it all generally tends to feel the same. It's about like getting to know the characters and sort of figuring out what I'm trying to say. And sort of, I always feel with a book, like for the first, 150 pages, you're sort of like pushing them up the hill. And then you get to a point where you're like, oh, and now it all plays out. And that felt like that with this one as well.
Now, when it came to creating this new pen name, Margaux Eliot, how did you approach creating Margaux specifically?
Well, so I used they're my kids' names are Margot and Elliot, and they're just spelled differently.
Oh,
So when I was trying to figure out a name, we had thought about doing still have my maiden name as my legal name, but we're like, oh, we could use like my husband's last name. We could do this. We could do that. And we floated a few things, and it just sounded like such a nice. There's a reason I like those names. That's why I named my kids. But then I didn't want to like have my kids' names, but they both are names with multiple spellings, and so I could play with it. And I think it was sort of, I'm not even sure how we exactly decided on it. But as soon as it was proposed and my children gave the okay, like they're little, so hopefully, the consent there, we'll see down the road how they feel. I think they're fine because again, it's like spelled differently and they feel proud to sort of have their names there. So
that is so cute. Honestly, I love that. So, what advice do you have for other authors who are thinking about splitting into a secondary pen name for writing in a new genre or even a new age group? I've seen some authors split by age group as well. So, what
Mhm.
advice do you have for authors who are considering a secondary pen name?
Yeah, I think the experience of publishing a book under a pen name is still feels very new and a little bit weird to me. And I am not like it's very obvious, like it's my picture big on the back and it says writing as Julia Fine, she's written these things. So like it feels a lot less to me like about creating a separate identity. I guess if I was a writer of very serious literary fiction and I wanted to like start writing spicy romance, I may be like, let me mask myself. But to me it feels much more like a way to differentiate between what the readership might be and who might be interested in this kind of book. And so I would say that if someone wants to write in a different genre but is nervous that, because of their track record somewhere else or because of the name they've already established for themselves, they either wouldn't be taken seriously or there wouldn't be a place for it. I think it is a really good option because it's sort of like lets you start over in a new space and do all the things that you want to do. And as somebody who I think is interested in, like, I don't want every book I write to feel the same. I think for my own purposes, like, part of what's fun for me about it is trying different things. And so I would say, like, if you try the thing and it's working, but you're having trouble sort of fully leaning into the new genre or the new age group or whatever it is, like giving yourself that alter ego and identity can be super helpful for, like you said, just opening up that side of yourself and letting yourself make the choices that you might not otherwise make.
I love that. Thank you for sharing.
No problem.
So, one last final thing I would like to cover is you offer manuscript consultations.
Yeah, I do a decent amount of editorial work. I taught my first novel coincided basically with my first kid. And before that, I was teaching college level writing classes. And then, because this is, being an adjunct does not pay for childcare in the way that you. So I stopped doing that and I started teaching creative writing classes. I teach for a place called Story Studio Chicago that has all sorts of different kinds of writing and literature classes. And some of the classes were, reading somebody's manuscript and giving feedback on it. And so I sort of was like, oh, I can very easily make this a primary job for myself. And it's super fun. I also had a lot of experience with my other writer friends. Like, I really love going in and sort of helping them find the parts of their manuscript that they feel like they're not sure what to do with, or things that aren't really working, things that are super strong, and really just making the books into the best books they can be before they go off to like agents or editors. So I'd already been doing that. And so I've started doing it a little more regularly with non-story studio and non-friend clients. And it is absolutely delightful because I feel like I get the best parts of editorial work without all of the business side that editors who work at a publishing house who have to worry about marketing and selling the book and, all of those things. Like, I can just look at it from an artistic perspective and also from a sort of like, what will readers want? But the pressure there is off, and I'm not, looking at cover design and trying to negotiate with salespeople. I just get to really do the part that I love.
I love that so much. Well, I want to thank you, Julia, for joining me on Must Love Books podcast today. We are here celebrating the release for Honeymoon Stage. And
Thank you so much for having me. This was lots of fun.
This has been super fun, and thank you for all of our listeners for tuning in today. Check out Julia Fine writing as Margaux Eliot and her newest novel, Honeymoon Stage. Thank you, everyone, for listening. This has been Must Love Books. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Patreon under @MustLoveBooksPodcast. Thank you and happy reading.
Time is precious, and so are our pets. So time with our pets is extra precious. That's why we started Dutch. Dutch provides 24/7 access to licensed vets with unlimited virtual visits and follow-ups for up to 5 pets. You can message a vet at any time and schedule a video visit the same day. Our vets can even prescribe medication for many ailments, and shipping is always free. With Dutch, you'll get more time with your pets and year-round peace of mind when it comes to their vet care. Go to Dutch.com to get vet care that is always there for just $92 a year.